Hey guys, welcome to episode 2 of the mini-series for creating an Android application called MoleMash using App Inventor Java Bridge. Today what we're going to work on is we're going to work on receiving touch events from the user. So those familiar with App Inventor will recognize these blocks. So what we have here is we have a touched event on the canvas object and a new score label. So this is how it's going to work. Whenever the user successfully touches the mole sprite, we want to increase their score. So this looks for a boolean that here we call touch sprite, and whenever that boolean is true, we're going to take our old score text and increment it by 1. And we're actually going to store the actual score in an integer and then set it in the label, as opposed to the way they're doing it, which is take the old score text and just increment it by 1. So this is where we left off last time. And so for now we're going to need two things. We need a new label and we need a new integer that actually holds the score. So starting with the score, it's going to start off at 0. Right? So this is kind of like the start off of our program, right? This is where we're going to initialize everything. So here I'm setting the score variable equal to 0. So now that we've done that, we actually need to create our label. So I'm just going to go ahead and call it score label. And just like we have for the sprite and the game canvas, we're going to initialize it in the define method. So it's a new label. Now, just like game canvas and image sprite, we have to pass in a component container. And if you remember last time, the game canvas took in the this object, which is actually the form. But our image sprite took in the game canvas as the component container. And this is because we didn't want the image sprite leaving this game canvas. The label, however, is going to be outside of the game canvas. So we're actually going to be passing in this. Because we want it at the, we're going to have it in our bottom of our screen. If you remember, that's the area that was not shaded in blue. Okay? And don't forget to import your label. So now that we have the label initialized, we want to actually start it off with the value of 0, just like we have for our score int variable. So score label has a method called text. And this takes in a string that is actually going to be used to be displayed in the label. So because it's looking for a string and our score is an integer, we need to actually create a string from that score object, or from that score int. So to do that, integer has a method called toString where we pass in the integer value. Okay, so now that that's all set up, all we have left to do, and actually let's go ahead and run this. Okay, so now you see our label is at the bottom left of our screen and it started at 0. So right now nothing happens when I click the mole, right? This should be incrementing the score. So what we need to do is we need to take our game canvas and override the touched method. So to do that, we're going to use the method called public void touched. Now we're overriding a method from the superclass being the canvas, okay? And the parameters are going to be the x-coordinate, the y-coordinate, and the Boolean touched sprite. And if you remember from the App Inventor version, we have that same thing. X, Y, and then the touch sprite Boolean. So what we want to do is we want to check, because we only have one sprite, whenever that one sprite is touched, we want to increment our score count, which is represented here, and set it to our label, which is represented here. So it's pretty straightforward. We're just going to do an if statement and say if the sprite was touched, then we want to increment score, And also you can do plus plus, you can do plus equals 1, or you can do score equals score plus 1. It doesn't matter, whichever you prefer. And now we want to set the score label just like we did right here. So I'm just going to actually copy and paste that and put it right there. So now if we run it again, so here's my label and here's my mole, and if I click the mole, you can see it's increasing by 1 each time I click it. Okay, and that's it for this tutorial. For the next tutorial, we are going to randomize the location of the mole so that it jumps around. And to do that, we're going to need to implement a game clock, which is going to fire off every so often and move the mole around, so that way it's not too easy to hit. So I hope this tutorial was useful to you, and I'll see you next time.